Welcome, everyone. My name is Kylie Heap. I'm the Executive Director of Support After Abortion, and we are just so glad to have you all here today for our session on when gratitude feels fake, support for you and your clients. Joining me for today's conversation on when gratitude feels fake are Michelle Maslin and Niles Pinkney, and we'll also be welcoming Karen Barbito during the question and answer. Let me tell you a little bit more about these folks. Michelle serves as our communications manager. Her work blends professional insight and compassion that has been shaped by her own reproductive loss experiences. Niles, our men's healing coordinator, equips providers and facilitates virtual healing groups, paying forward his own healing after abortion. And Karen is our healing support specialist. Her work with clients and coaching providers draws on her own healing after abortion and the life challenges that she faced, including addiction, codependency, and homelessness. So, without further ado, let us begin our time together. And thank you again for being here.
Thanks, Kylie, and thanks everyone for being here today. The season of giving thanks can feel uncomfortable for people wrestling with grief, regret, and emotional exhaustion, including those like yourselves offering care and support for others. Today, we'll talk candidly about how to navigate the tension between gratitude and pain, especially in abortion healing work. And we'll explore how to hold space for both gratitude and grief without minimizing either one, and how you can help your clients to do the same. Our roadmap today, we're going to talk about gratitude, its benefits, and the impact that trauma can have on gratitude, unhealthy or fake gratitude and its harm, emotional readiness for gratitude, emotionally congruent support, and tools for you and your clients. According to the dictionary, gratitude is appreciating benefits received. And according to psychologists and researchers, gratitude is an emotion about appreciating the helpful actions of other people. And gratitude is a life orientation toward noticing and appreciating the positive in the world. Those last researchers, including a professor of mental health and well-being, say that gratitude is strongly related to all aspects of well-being.
So, gratitude isn't just a feel-good idea. It changes the brain. And gratitude helps us to think more clearly, respond more calmly, and build resilience. Let's dig into some of those neuroscience benefits together. When we practice gratitude, our brain actually shifts toward more positive emotional states. It lights up the areas tied to reward and motivation, which is why people feel a noticeable lift in their mood and energy when they build gratitude into their routines. And this first section highlights how those brain responses translate into a greater emotional well-being. Gratitude also helps to retrain the brain away from negative loops and toward a steadier, calmer outlook. So when we practice it regularly, it disrupts some of those mental loops that keep us stuck in worry and negativity. And over time, that creates space for a little bit less anxiety, less heaviness, and a more even and grounded perspective on life. In this section, we focus on how gratitude physically settles the body. When we pause to notice what's going well, it actually nudges the nervous system out of that heightened, stressed state and into a calmer one. It quiets the brain's alarm signals and helps to lower the physiological stress that we can carry, making us more grounded and more steady. And this final piece highlights that gratitude doesn't just affect our mood, it actually shows up in our body. So when gratitude becomes a habit, people tend to sleep better, they have more steady energy, and they support their overall physical well-being. It also helps with daily functioning, making it easier to stay focused and present throughout the day. So you must be wondering, with all these benefits, you would think gratitude would be super easy to lean into, right? What's the problem? Why do so many people struggle to practice it consistently, especially when life feels heavy or complicated? Let's talk about that. What gets in the way? Instead of thinking about mental health as something that you either have or you don't, it can be helpful to picture it like three dimmer switches. I absolutely love this graphic. Each one can kind of slide toward the negative or the positive. And the first switch is how you see the world. Does it feel mostly unsafe and threatening, or mostly good and trustworthy? The second is how you see yourself. Do you tend to feel like you're not enough or broken, or do you see yourself as capable and growing? The third switch is how you see the future. Does it feel hopeless, or do you believe that there's still room for good things ahead? When those inner switches are leaning toward this is too hard or everything feels dark, forcing gratitude is not the answer. It's kind of like telling someone to just flip everything to bright right now when their whole system is still sitting in the dark. And that kind of pressure, it doesn't help people heal. It just tasks them to perform. And that is what we mean by the gratitude dilemma. Gratitude isn't all good or all bad. There are both helpful forms and harmful forms. And for many people, especially those navigating grief, there's a real emotional clash between gratitude and what they're actually feeling. And that tension can be even more complex after abortion. So, we're going to look at how genuine gratitude supports healing and how forced or performative gratitude can get in the way.
Thanks, Kylie. Let's look next at the neuroscience of gratitude and trauma. And first, let's define trauma. Many people think of trauma in relation to violence, abuse, catastrophic injury, which it is, but experts emphasize that trauma also occurs when an experience overwhelms your ability to cope and affects your emotional, physical, social, mental, or spiritual well-being. So yes, it includes what happened, but it also includes how your nervous system experienced it. So what overwhelms one person might not overwhelm another, which is why not everyone who experiences abortion names their experience as trauma. This is a great example of why language matters, because how we define and discuss experiences can shape whether or not or how it resonates with people. So as we go through this information from psychologists, you could substitute the word pain when you hear trauma. In the neuroscience of gratitude and trauma, when a trauma occurs, it initiates that fight, flight, freeze stress response. And then after the event, the trauma trigger, intense emotions, and that shoulda, coulda, woulda often remain and can lead to withdrawal to safety and rest. An overactive nervous system, common after trauma or painful events, can make gratitude challenging. So why does an overactive nervous system after a traumatic event make gratitude challenging? The reactive part of the brain is mostly in charge at that point, keeping the person in a constant anxious reactiveness, whereas the responsive, proactive, concept-oriented part of the brain, the side that can initiate gratitude, is mostly on the sidelines. So it's not that they may not want to or even try to be positive. The pain of trauma has left them feeling not good enough, ashamed, guilty, injured, unworthy. And the upper part of their brain is not engaged enough to overcome those feelings and contemplate gratitude in a meaningful way. Neuroscience also shows that trying to change the way we feel sends a signal that something needs to be fixed in us. And that signal itself can be so stressful that it can activate survival mode and put us right back into withdrawal. As Brene Brown says, you can't gratitude your way out of pain. So I'd like to ask you to take a moment to think about this in your own life. Maybe you were grieving. Maybe something had just gone wrong and somebody said, be grateful, or at least, and it just didn't land. Think about what that was like for you and what you actually needed in that moment. What comes to mind first for me was after one of my miscarriages. And people meant well, but they kept saying things like, at least you have other kids, and be thankful it was early. And while, of course, I was grateful and thankful for my other children, I was also devastated. And not only can those two things exist at the same time, but the devastation and the grief, that needed space first. So we're going to talk about harmful or fake gratitude. I'd like to make an analogy to get us ready for that conversation. So think back to when you were a kid and you and your siblings are fighting over something and you're both in tears. Maybe you're standing there holding a toy that they broke, trying to grab it away from you, or you're nursing a red arm because they slapped you. And your parent or adult tells you both to say you're sorry. Or maybe they go one better and say you're sorry and mean it, or apologize and hug each other. So you begrudgingly comply, but inside you're seething. Maybe you're even angrier or more hurt because there was no acknowledgement or dealing with what happened or how you felt about it. And the forced apology was like putting a Band-Aid on a wound without first cleaning and disinfecting it. Forced or fake gratitude is similar.
And this is where toxic positivity comes in. I'm sure you've all seen those positive vibes only type messaging. It's what happens when we push ourselves or someone else to be upbeat and grateful or look on the bright side, even when that's not what the heart is actually feeling. So instead of creating space for real emotions, it actually shuts that person down. Toxic positivity isn't about genuine hope, it's about forcing optimism. And when we skip over what is real, we end up blocking the very healing that we're all trying to reach. Sometimes people use gratitude in a way that actually keeps them from dealing with what they're really feeling. And it usually comes from a good place. They want to feel better, or they think that they're supposed to focus on the positives. But when gratitude gets used to push down grief, anger, shame, or trauma, it really stops being helpful. It turns into a way of avoiding emotions rather than working through them. And there's a name for this. I did not know it before we worked on this presentation, but it's called gratitude bypassing. It's a form of emotional bypassing where gratitude is encouraged too early, and it's used like a tool to fix someone's pain instead of sitting with it. And in after abortion healing, this shows up all the time. People say, I should just be grateful, or other people have it worse, or I chose this, so I don't have the right to be upset. Those statements should sound like gratitude, but they're actually running from the hurt that we're experiencing. And healthy gratitude, it just doesn't skip over grief, it makes room for both. So here's what gratitude bypassing could look like in real life. It can sound just like telling yourself or somebody else to just be grateful when you're actually hurting inside. And it can show up as skipping over real emotional pain with statements like, at least it wasn't worse, or you should be thankful for what you really do have. And people might even feel guilty for being sad because other people have it worse, or they feel pressure to be grateful instead of being encouraged to voice what they need. These messages sound super positive, but they are shutting down the very emotions that need attention. Spiritual bypassing is another new term to me, but it's a version of the same pattern that we've been talking about. Instead of using positivity, people are using spiritual language to move around pain instead of moving through it. It can sound like it's all part of God's plan, just trust Him, or you should be grateful for what God has done, or even quoting scripture about rejoicing or giving thanks. Sometimes it's God will use this for good or offer it up. Now, here's the important part. Trusting God and noticing blessings and uniting our suffering to Christ are all genuinely good and meaningful spiritual practices. The problem isn't the practices themselves. The problem is when they're used to avoid or silence real emotions and real issues. When someone's hurting, those statements can unintentionally shut the door on their grief instead of helping them bring it before God if they're a religious person. So the goal isn't to stop using spiritual language with those who are receptive to it. It's to use it in a way that supports healing rather than bypassing over it.
David Kessler, an expert on grief, talks about 6 needs of the grieving. And what we're talking about today touches on the first 2. Your need to have your pain witnessed, to be seen, and your need to express your feelings. Let's look deeper at why gratitude bypassing can be harmful and unhealthy. First, it minimizes real emotional pain, making people feel invalidated or unseen. And suppressing emotions is linked with elevated stress markers, depressive symptoms, and more difficulty regulating emotions even outside of crisis. It can shut down vulnerability, leading to emotional isolation. It delays healing because unprocessed grief, regret, and other emotions resurface in other ways. And it can reinforce shame, especially if people already feel like their emotions are wrong or unjustified. And with spiritual bypassing, in addition to shutting down emotions, it can add guilt on top of pain by implying that grief, regret, sadness, etc., are signs of a weak faith. Someone might ask themselves, if I'm not feeling thankful, am I failing as a Christian? Or am I disappointing God because I'm sad or angry? Theologian and best-selling author Dr. Glenn Packiam says gratitude that bypasses grief isn't healing, it's hiding. Emotional bypassing, gratitude bypassing, toxic positivity, spiritual bypassing. Picture them all like putting a hand on the lid of a pressure cooker and forcing all the emotions and pain to stay bottled up rather than dealing with them before they leak out or explode. It's also helpful to remember that not feeling gratitude or not wanting to fake gratitude is not the same as ingratitude. Ingratitude is a stance of rejecting what's good. Not feeling gratitude, as we're talking about, is a state. Your system or your client's system may be in pain, stress, or grief, which narrows your access to feeling gratitude. Think blocked signal, not closed heart. And what a heart in pain needs is not fake gratitude, but real healing of the wounds that are blocking the path. When that pain is heard, seen, and dealt with, and the wall of wounds is removed, and the signals no longer blocked, then the responsive part of the brain can kick in, and the person can find space and voice for genuine, healthy gratitude.
Thank you. This is a really important question for any of us who are supporting other people. When is the support that we're offering emotionally congruent, and when is it emotionally incongruent? In other words, are we meeting someone where they're actually at, or are we responding from a place where we wish that they were? Let's look at each of these in practice. Emotionally incongruent support is what happens when our response just doesn't match where the other person actually is. It might not be wrong, it just is the wrong fit for that moment. So sometimes it comes out as being a little too upbeat when they're heavy, or sounding clinical when what they really need is warmth. Other times it's offering something very spiritual when they're not in a place to receive that, or the opposite, being very practical when they're really longing for a spiritual grounding. Basically, anytime our response is too something for the moment, too bright, too heavy, too directive, too distant, it's a mismatch, and people can feel that mismatch immediately. So here's what emotionally congruent support looks like, and this is what we want to aim for instead of gratitude bypassing. The first thing is that we acknowledge the hard before we invite anything hopeful. People need to know that we see their pain before they can even consider anything else. Second, we hold space for both the hard and the hopeful when it's appropriate. We don't have to choose one or the other. Someone can be grieving and grateful. They can be hurting and healing. Our job is to make room for the entire picture. And finally, if we offer gratitude practices, we offer them gently as an option, but never as a requirement, never as a you should. Gratitude is powerful only when it's chosen, not when it's prescribed. So I'm going to invite Niles and Michelle to join me to give you all some examples of what it could look like to provide emotionally incongruent and congruent support. I'm going to play the villain, emotionally incongruent support. Niles is going to be our client, and Michelle is going to be the one who represents emotionally congruent support. As we navigate this, I just want you to just sit in the shoes of the client and see the way in which these two different types of responses, even if mine comes from the right place in my heart, doesn't land. Take it away, Niles.
Thank you, Kylie. I wake up sad every day.
Starting a gratitude list every morning would be so helpful. Why don't you write down 3 blessings?
Mornings sound really heavy right now. Would you like to share what comes up most or first for you?
Whenever I try to talk about it, my partner and my mom both tell me I should focus on blessings.
They're right. Gratitude really does help.
Sounds like you're feeling unheard. Would you like to share what's going on? I'm here to listen.
Seeing babies and pregnant moms is so hard. Being with all the family for the holidays is going to be triggering.
You should think about what you're grateful for and what you're thankful for and try to be happy for the other people.
I can see how hard that would be for you. Would you like to make a plan for exits or breathing breaks?
I feel guilty for not feeling thankful. Plus, I know others have it. Worse, I really should be thankful.
If you practice gratitude, it's going to come more easily and the guilt is going to fade.
You're carrying a lot. Pain isn't a competition. Your experience matters. Would you like to talk about it? I'll make a note here that when clients say something like, I should be grateful, that is a red flag that they might be pushing past what's really going on. So I'd like to take a moment to think about this in your own life and work. Sometimes gratitude's offered too quickly. Maybe not because we're trying to dismiss the pain. Maybe it's because we're uncomfortable with it. Sometimes we do this to ourselves too. So let's just pause for a moment, reflect on a time when gratitude bypassed something deeper. Might have been in your own healing or while supporting someone else. And then think about, what did that moment need instead? Niles, would you like to switch gears and tell us about gratitude in men?
Of course. So, let's take a moment to talk about gratitude in men, because it might not surprise you that men handle gratitude differently than women. Gratitude in men, why it matters. Disenfranchised grief. Many men don't feel permission to grieve about abortion experiences. When gratitude is pushed by themselves or others, it can double down their silence. Gratitude may feel like a required mask, shutting down space for emotion processing. And these are a few things they may say. At least she's okay now. My friends say to be thankful. I dodged a bullet.
Hmm.
Cultural expectations. Men are often conditioned to man up, move on, or fix it, rather than acknowledge pain or vulnerability. Gratitude may be weaponized as a quick fix or proof of emotional control. And with this quote, I need to be strong and focus on the good. Providers may unintentionally affirm success when a man skips to gratitude, not realizing it might be emotional bypassing. Ask yourself, am I interpreting a man's quick shift to gratitude as healing, or could it be a strategy to avoid pain he doesn't think he's allowed to feel or is conditioned to avoid? Gratitude in men. Research shows the relationship between gratitude and well-being is at least as strong for men as it is for women, perhaps more important. Yet, men express gratitude less than women. Men often view gratitude as undesirable, difficult to express, and sometimes humiliating. One third of men ages 35 through 50 would prefer to conceal gratitude rather than openly express it. Men feel more conflicted, burdened, and indebted by gratitude, similar to receiving gifts, favor, or help. Connected to strong cultural expectations of self-sufficiency, seen as weakness because gratitude involves vulnerability. Now, we're going to talk about a few different ways that gratitude can feel fake for providers. And here are 5 ways: compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma, secondary grief, unresolved grief, holiday hustle syndrome, and fundraising season fatigue. Compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma, repeatedly holding space for others' pain, can numb your own emotional responses. Gratitude may feel like another task rather than a genuine emotional state. You may feel guilty for not feeling grateful, especially if you believe you should be. Secondary grief. Hearing others' abortion stories, especially if they echo your own, can stir up old grief. Gratitude pressure may collide with unprocessed feelings, such as anger, helplessness, and guilt. Unresolved grief. If something in your personal story still stings, or hasn't been named, honored, or healed, gratitude may become a tool to bypass rather than address it. Might show up as steering clients toward gratitude wins before they're ready, or focusing on the positive too soon. Might show up as pushing yourself to express or feel gratitude before you have processed your own grief. Holiday hustle syndrome. The demand to do more with fewer resources, show up for clients, attend events, and meet family or social expectations all at once. It can exhaust your emotional bandwidth. Performance-based gratitude, such as social media posts, donor updates, can feel disconnected from your lived experience. Fundraising season fatigue. Many providers are asked to produce success stories or messages of hope to satisfy donors or year-end campaigns. If you're witnessing or experiencing complex or unfinished healing journeys, this can feel inauthentic or pressuring. There's a risk of bypassing the hard parts to make a story more palatable. Signs you may be emotionally checked out or overcompensating gratitude. Emotionally checking out. You may feel numb, unmotivated, or disinterested. You struggle to connect with clients or stories. Skipping breaks, silence, or reflective practices. And then using platitudes to comfort yourself or clients. For example, at least. Overcompensating gratitude. Posting cheerful updates while feeling discouraged. For example, so grateful or feeling so blessed. Performing positivity for donors. Ignoring your own stress or pain to appear thankful. Skipping emotional debrief time due to pressure to move on or stay thankful. Jumping to silver lining thinking. Feeling guilty for fatigue or grief instead of focusing on positives. Toxic internal monologue to be thankful or not complain. Here's a provider story. I remember a time when I was feeling emotionally drained after work with several clients in a crisis. I was exhausted and sad, but I told myself, I shouldn't feel this way. I have a good job, a supportive team, and a purpose. I should be grateful. In that moment, I wasn't using gratitude as comfort. I was using it as a weapon against my own pain. I was trying to gratitude my way out of being tired and overwhelmed, but it just made me feel worse, adding ungrateful to my list of criticisms about myself. What that moment needed instead, it needed self-compassion and acknowledgement. I could say to myself, I appreciate helping others, and I'm also tired and sad. It's okay to feel it all. It's okay to take time to rest. I need rest, release, and permission to feel. Think of a time you told yourself to be grateful when what you really needed was to be gentle with yourself. What stories, pressures, or expectations are influencing how gratitude feels for you this season? Consider, are you faking gratitude to keep going? Are you minimizing your own pain? What would self-compassion and acknowledgement look like? Where might you need space to pause and acknowledge fatigue, grief, or whatever you're going through?
Thank you, Niles. Let's turn now to some practical tips on gratitude for the grieving. How do we know if a client is ready for gratitude practices so we can meet them where they are? Let's talk about gratitude in different stages of grief. First, I'm going to ask you to notice the path in the upper left corner. It looks nice and neat, as if you would go step by step. Now, notice the messy lines in the upper right corner. These intersecting up and down lines, they reflect the reality that we often cross back and forth into different emotional and grief phases. For example, you may have gone through healing, maybe a lot of healing, and then something happens and you feel like you're right back in the acute deep grief stage. In fact, I spoke to a woman this week who's 30 years after her abortion and healing has been decades away. She's been a facilitator for years, and a grandbaby was born, and it just brought it all right back, and she's back in that deep grief phase. Others, maybe years down the road, but they've bottled up their emotions and they're just now dealing with it, and they may be in acute deep grief. A person's support needs and gratitude desires or openness will change depending on the emotional stage that they're in. So we can't assume that people need or are ready for XYZ simply because a certain amount of time has passed, which is why we intentionally don't list times like 0 to 6 months after abortion, or 2 years after abortion, or 10 years after abortion. In that acute, deep grief, emotional shock phase, the person may feel numb, overwhelmed, shut down, and gratitude may feel irrelevant, inaccessible, or even offensive. Their support needs are safety, validation, and permission to not be okay. In the integration, active processing, meaning-making phase, they may begin naming emotions, telling their story, asking why. They may experience conflicting feelings about gratitude, wanting to feel thankful, but also feeling guilt or shame for not being there yet. Support needs include empathy, reflection tools, and space for grief and gratitude. And in ongoing healing and growth, they may experience new insights, reconciliation, or connection to purpose. Gratitude may be more integrated, but still coexist in pain. Support needs encouragement to keep growing without pressure to arrive. The benefits of this reframe are that it removes pressure to feel better now or be grateful now. It reflects the non-linear nature of healing and common ups and downs. It encourages meeting clients where they are emotionally, not chronologically or where we wish they were or think they should be. And it fits naturally with compassionate, options-based approaches. To give you a quick moment here to consider how each client's stage of healing might affect their relationship with gratitude, and what would it look like to give them permission to feel honestly before they feel grateful. We'd like to share with you some tools for healthy gratitude. If you registered for today's webinar, you'll receive links in the 1 p.m. email, and if not, you'll receive them in the recap next week. So the first handout that you'll get is a reflection and journaling tool. When gratitude feels fake, my space for what's real. We're going to zoom in to show you the details. So it encourages people to use the prompts however they like, not to feel like they have to complete everything. The first question is, what feels heavy? Take a moment to name what feels hard, heavy, or unresolved. And you'll see that these different questions have a few examples here, like I miss what could have been. I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. I feel alone and worn out. The next question is what I wish were different. Name what you long for, what still hurts, or what you wish had gone another way. What still feels true. Without denying what's hard, name something, however small, that feels real, grounding, or good. And it's okay if nothing comes to mind. Then what I need right now. Even on rough days, some things can offer a small anchor. What's something that helps you come back to yourself when things are hard? What can I offer myself today? What's one small thing you can do to support or care for yourself today? It might be a simple action, a kind thought, or a quiet moment just for you. And I really like this one. What doesn't fit neatly in a box? If something is stirring that doesn't fit in a tidy list, give it a word, a phrase, or a picture here. And then at the bottom of the handout, it has a caution when gratitude feels forced. If you notice yourself saying things like, I should be grateful, at least it wasn't worse, others have it harder, pause and ask yourself, am I using gratitude to cover up what still hurts? Am I pushing myself to be thankful because I think I should, not because I really am? And then to give yourself compassion. The second handout is 8 signs that gratitude may be forced. And let's zoom in on that one. In this one, you'll see it's a table with a column for what it sounds like. And then I say this to myself, I say this to others, or people say this to me. This is a self-awareness tool to notice when gratitude might be forced, rushed, or used to avoid pain, grief, or something else. And it shows it could sound like at least, feeling guilty for struggling, minimizing or rushing past uneasiness with silence, stillness, or reflection, using gratitude to avoid hard conversations, shift gratitude to gratitude when emotions get intense, feeling tense or shut down when gratitude is mentioned, and avoiding people who are hurting. And there's a cue down there at the bottom. Notice a pattern. That's your cue to pause and check in with yourself or someone you trust. And it has a QR code link to our blog on gratitude. This blog, Gratitude and Abortion Healing at Thanksgiving, Finding Light During Difficult Seasons, talks about why gratitude can feel impossible after abortion, why gratitude timing matters, practical tips for navigating Thanksgiving and holiday triggers, signs you may or may not be ready for gratitude after abortion yet. And I want to just draw your attention to that word yet. It's such a powerful word. And when you read the blog, it's such a tiny word that you might miss that it's hyperlinked to a great article on the power of the word yet. So I encourage you to look for that hyperlink and read that too. How to make gratitude feel safe after abortion and how gratitude can grow over time. And then our third handout for you today is a supportive language swap sheet. In this one, it's a guide for anyone who wants to help someone feel validated and not dismissed. So instead of is in the left column and try saying this is in the right column. I'll just read a couple of them. At least you still have, or at least you weren't further along. You might try, that sounds painful to carry. I'm here if you want to talk about it. Or be grateful, it could be worse. You've been through a lot. It's okay to name that. Pain isn't a competition. And then the bottom of the sheet has some more. And the second page, gratitude really does help. Sounds like you're feeling unheard. Would you like to talk more? I'm here to listen. That might sound familiar. We did that in the role play. And then at the bottom of the second page are some pro tips. Hold space before offering hope. Notice timing. Validate before reframing. Be curious and invite. And support their processing. And again, you'll get all 3 of those handouts in the 1 p.m. email and in the recap next week.
This is my slide. Like, I feel so seen by this graphic because sometimes life just feels exactly like this. It's tangled, it's messy, it's overwhelming. And when someone is in that place or when we're in that place, it's just so tempting to reach out for anything that feels like order or relief, even if it's not really what the moment calls for. So let's just be honest. This stuff is hard. It sounds great in theory and it makes so much sense logically, but in the moment when the emotions are running high, whether it's theirs or ours, it can get messy, like really fast. So try to hold space for pain without pushing someone too quickly toward hope. And that's tricky. And none of us get it right 100% of the time. As I was preparing for today with my team, I realized how much this has been applying to my own life. Many of you have known that my mom has been walking through a really difficult medical journey. And there have been some times when she has been in very dark emotional places. And we've had that same painful conversation on repeat over and over and over again. I tried so many different things, and I'll admit I have gotten really frustrated at points. I've wanted to say something, anything to shift her out of that cycle. And in that desperation, I even caught myself saying things like, Mom, you survived a major heart surgery. You should feel grateful. Even as I said it, I knew it wasn't helping. I could see her face drop, and she did not feel seen at all in that moment. And it was me. I was trying to control the moment because I was feeling overwhelmed. And I've been on the receiving end of this too. When my dad died, someone told me I should be grateful that he was in a better place and wasn't feeling pain. And I understood the heart behind it, just like I understood my own heart when I said what I said to my mom. But it sure did not comfort me. It even made me wonder if there was a selfish part to my heart that just wanted him here, pain and all. And all of that tangled my grief even more. And this is exactly what happens for so many people after abortion. They say things like, I made this choice, so I don't deserve to feel sad. Other people have it worse. I should just be grateful. I don't deserve compassion. I don't get to grieve. And these are survival statements. They are ways that people try to regulate unbearable emotions, not by working through them, but by shutting them right back down. And they sound like logic or spiritual clarity or gratitude, but underneath it's just tangled up pain, just like this graphic. Our role as abortion healing providers is not to push gratitude or hope prematurely, even when we want them to feel better. Our role is to sit with them in that mess so that they don't have to sit in it alone. And this scribble is what the inside of the heart looks like when someone's carrying grief and shame and conflict and trauma. And healing begins not when we straighten it out for them, but when we honor what is actually there. So, with that, Michelle, I'd love to have you share some of your own experience navigating this tension.
Well, I'm actually feeling a little teary-eyed after you said that. That was not all that we had talked about. So that part with your dad was just so moving. I mean, I'm very aware of what's going on with the situation with your mom, but I had one thing I was going to share, but the comment with your dad, what that brings to me is when my twins were stillborn, and I suffered something called hyperemesis gravidarum with all of my pregnancies. Any of you who know that, it's beyond morning sickness on steroids. And so I had been bedridden for many, many months. I was excruciatingly, horribly sick with lots of complications. And what I heard from more than a few people was, well, at least you're not sick anymore. My children died, but you're not sick anymore. So yeah, that did not sit well. And then on a lighter note, as we were working on this, I caught myself saying, well, at least to my husband when he had shared something that was challenging. And it was only later, probably after I got back to my office working on this. And I just totally bypassed his concern and his feelings and jumped to that silver lining thinking and quickly got back to work. So just know that we are right here in it with you. We are learning fresh insights and learning how to listen better and try again and keep showing up with care. And with that, we are going to turn to the Q&A. I am sure that we have received some questions in the chat, and I know we had some through private means. So I'm going to jump in one here right away. And Karen is going to join us because she is such an expert facilitator. And this is a perfect question for you, Karen. How can I gently redirect a well-meaning group member who keeps using gratitude statements to other participants that minimize their pain?
It's a really good question. We have group guidelines, which kind of creates a safe place for people to share appropriately. And part of those group guidelines is to not crosstalk and to keep it to I statements. So when I heard that question, it made me think that some of the participants may be saying to somebody who just shared, at least you already have children, or you're still young, you can have kids in the future. If this happens in a group I was facilitating, I would address it right away and just remind all of the participants, not just that one particular person, but all of the participants about our group guidelines, which is no crosstalk and keep it to I statements.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. I'm going to ask you another one. How about suggestions for when some people in the group are still in a hard place and others want to share what they're grateful for?
Yeah, we actually encountered this not too long ago, where one of the participants in a abortion healing group was triggered by what other participants were sharing, which was the other participants' experience, right? And this person wanted us to censor what they could say because it was making her hurt worse. And we couldn't do that. I mean, as long as we're keeping it to I statements, we're sharing from our personal experience, we're not cross talking, then we got to allow people to share what's on their heart. And so in that situation, I wouldn't address it in the group. I would talk to that person outside of the group and see if I could better understand what was going on with her. I would just ask her some additional open-ended questions to find out how she was responding to what they were saying.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Karen. Okay, Niles, you ready? I've got one for you. This question is, do you have tips for introducing the journaling handout to clients who don't usually write or are resistant to journaling? And I'm tapping Niles because I know he likes to journal.
Of course. Well, just with a personal story for myself, I think the biggest things is when I started journaling myself, it was hard. I was like, what do I write? Do I just put a bunch of words that just come to my mind? Do I just ramble? And that's it. At first, it sounds kind of crazy, but when you do write those words and you just start sorting it out, I realize that I'm just putting my emotions to give myself something to come back to. So the biggest tips I can give to those that may not be that big into writing or wanting to start is I'd say just start by writing down your thoughts. One of the favorite things I like to do is I write what can I control and what can I not control, and just write down those things and sort through those thoughts. If I can control it, let's have a solution. Let's figure out what to do. And if I can't control it, why are we stressing? And I know it sounds easier said than done. Everyone tells me because sometimes I can have that toxic positivity, as we talked about today, that I got to work on at times. But that would just be my first tip. One of my biggest tips is just start off with something that feels comfortable and for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Niles. Okay, Karen and Niles, either one of you. How can we help those who bypass their own emotions with platitudes and help them know that we're a safe place to share how they really feel?
Hmm, that's a great question.
Take a stab at it. I mean, I think for me, everybody knows that I like to dig a little bit when somebody says something, and I would remain curious. I would probably say something like, I'm really curious. Michelle, can I stay there with you for a minute? So what's underneath that? What is that positive thinking covering up? I think that's probably where I would start.
Awesome. And the reason we're laughing is because Karen says that a lot. Can I stay there? Okay, let's see. Is it ever okay to say at least? I've had times where I was really thankful something wasn't worse. I'll take that one. I think that's a great question. And I'm sure many of us have been in that situation where we have been grateful for something. I shared with my team what we were talking about and working on for this webinar. And she asked that same question. And she gave an example. She said, if I lost a leg, I'd be thankful I didn't lose both legs. And isn't that a good thing? And I think the key in both the question and her wording is the person saying, when I was really thankful, because that means it was genuine and authentic. So I asked my daughter how she'd feel if she was really struggling emotionally after losing a leg, but felt like she had to show she was grateful instead of showing her real emotions, or how she would feel if someone told her, at least it wasn't both legs, you should be grateful, and they didn't acknowledge her grief and struggles. And then she agreed that was different. So that's what we're talking about here, using force or fake gratitude to bypass emotions instead of validating and dealing with them. All right, let's see. We've got time for maybe another question. Let's see. Karen, I'm going to tap you again. Some people just can't get past the pain. How long do we sit in the dark together with them before we start poking holes to bring in some light?
That's really a good question. I've experienced this before with people who just are in that circular negative thinking in their head and they can't seem to interrupt it. And so I think that leading with compassion, being with them in their pain, and not judging them at all, first of all, makes it possible for them, it creates a space for them to be able to honestly share with us what's going on. And then I wonder if the strategies that I use all the time about being curious and asking open-ended questions, if this isn't a place for that as well, where it would be language like, can I sit with you in that? Tell me more about that. What's the part of you that's still holding the pain so tightly? What is it? What are you getting out of holding this so tightly? See, facilitation and asking those kind of questions is really about nurturing the client to come to a feeling or a finding or a revelation for themselves, right? It's not telling them what they should be feeling. It's allowing them to get to the bottom of it themselves and expressing what they're feeling now and where they want to be eventually, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Karen. I always love hearing you speak on facilitating. Thank you, everyone, so much for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again at next month's training.